We may as well start. Hello, everyone. I'm John McNamara. This is Amy McCormick. I'm one of the senior vendors in the lab, and Amy is a product manager for IBM Healthcare Integration. Amy, can you tell us why is healthcare so important to IBM at the moment?
So we've been making huge investments in IBM in healthcare, kind of all across IBM. Most recently, we'll have seen the Watson Health announcement. So it's a business unit that's been set up dedicated to healthcare, and not just healthcare, all forms of life sciences and biomedical, like pharmaceutical type organizations as well. But IBM's been in healthcare for the last 50, 60, 70 years, and right from the first heart-lung machine that was built by 5 IBMers and a very prominent doctor called Dr. Gibbon. It was used in prototypes for the first open heart transplant. So IBM has been in healthcare for a lot longer than most people think, but it's only really in the last few years that we've actually made a real big splash about it.
Right.
So with the Watson Health announce, we had some interesting new acquisitions. We had some interesting partnerships. But we do a lot of other stuff across IBM as well when it comes to healthcare, which I'll be talking about, I guess, a little bit later on. But the reason that IBM has made such a big deal of being in healthcare at the moment, I suppose, is because we're right on this really interesting transformation at the moment. Not just IBM, although IBM is going through a pretty big transformation at the moment, but the healthcare industry as a whole. And I suppose this has been going on for the last few years, but now, because of the advances in medicine, because of the advances in technology, we're really starting to see this kind of shift much more towards a space where IBM can really deliver value. So there are tons of challenges. Firstly, things like an increasing population. Not just in the US, not just in China and the rest of Asia Pacific, but all over the world. I don't like the term, but globalization. So these are local problems that are happening, but it's on a global scale. So everywhere we're starting to see populations. I mean, Europe, for instance, is going to triple in terms of the number of people over the age of 65 by 2050. We've already doubled in the last 50 years, the baby boom population, the baby boom era. Japan itself has the largest population of over 65s of anywhere in the world. This is not a problem that is specific to one country alone. We also have problems where people have ever more complex and changing healthcare needs. So now we're starting to see a really increasing incidence of chronic diseases like congestive heart failure and diabetes and all those kinds of chronic diseases where patients really require long-term ongoing care. So it's not just about the populations themselves growing, but it's about the kind of complexities within those populations as well. But we also have other challenges to add to the mix, like critical resource shortages. So the number of qualified care staff coming into these industries who are actually going to be able to care for these people, they're declining. There's just simply not enough people to care. So that's just a few of them. I was talking about some of the advances in medicine, some of the advances in technology, but this really is a tipping point within the industry at the moment where organizations, particularly these health delivery organizations, are really looking towards technology to solve some of these problems. So this is where Watson Health comes in. And I'm not going to talk just about Watson Health today. We are going to talk about integration. This is where technologies like Watson Health come in, because it's about gaining insights from, if I'm a healthcare worker, like a physician in Peru or somewhere like that, where I don't have, perhaps teams of world-class physicians at my beck and call, like some places in the States do, some places in Europe do. How do I access the latest health data? How do I get insights very, very quickly on my individual patients so I can kind of treat them in a very personal way? So that's kind of why Watson Health has been brought up. That's why IBM has made a big splash about it. But we realize across IBM that this is such an important industry to really kind of help drive value.
Fantastic. So what are some of the solutions that IBM is coming up with to help these challenges?
So Watson is obviously one of them, but we have tons more within IBM as well. So any organization is going to need a number of different types of solutions to make them efficient as an organization, to help keep them competitive, and so on. Solutions like security, like cloud, mobile, for delivering services in new ways, or delivering existing services in new ways and delivering new services to new markets. There's also things like cloud, so taking advantage of new, very fast moving technology, but also deploying having new deployment options for existing, like, legacy applications, for instance. We want to find a cheaper way of running them. So IBM has a lot of solutions that can help in all of those types of areas. But specifically for healthcare, we have things like master data management that's geared specifically towards healthcare. So our Initiate product line has an enterprise master patient index, for instance, like a patient repository. So that's one of them. We obviously have our healthcare integration solution, which I'll come on to in a second. But we also have a whole suite of care management products as well. So when we look at how a patient moves around the continuum of care, so it's not just about kind of the clinical indicators of health. It's about like their mental indicators, their personal and social indicators as well. So how do you tie care practitioners from across that continuum together? And that's what our care management products do. So we have so many different products that can help in all areas, whether you are a health organization, whether you're a health delivery organization, or whether you are a health insurance or payer organization, whether you're a pharmaceutical organization, whether you're in life sciences, so just tons. I mean, we support so many organizations from right across the kind of care, the kind of care spectrum. So lots of different solutions, including some that are specifically geared towards healthcare.
Fantastic. So you touched this briefly, but why is integration so important here?
So integration really underpins anything that an organization will do. So in its simplest form, integration is about connecting something to something else, or multiple other something else's, so that you can derive business value from those two IT assets. Okay, that is, in its simplest form, that's what integration is about. Now, a healthcare organization is no different. We've started to see in the last couple of years this real drive towards a digitization of health records.
Okay.
So I now have a health record system, and I might have a patient administration system. Unless those two are connected, I can't really get too much meaningful value out of those. If I can't access my electronic health record from some application or another to put in what symptoms a patient's had, or what treatment I've given them, or so on, things like that, then how am I going to get as much value how am I going to reach that kind of real potential out of that? So integration is really important when we talk about those sorts of things, because at the moment we're seeing a lot of health organizations have invested in electronic health records, but they have a lot of other systems as well, not just the clinical, but the enterprise systems as well. So it's about pulling together disparate sources of data, disparate applications, whether those are legacy applications, whether they're new applications, and making sure that they are being used together so that we get the complete value that is possible out of all of those applications within an enterprise, but also so that we can work with other enterprises. So if we think of like healthcare, patient referrals, for instance, about connecting to other organizations as well, to make sure that we are really making that projected patient outcome as good as possible by giving as much information that is useful to the next provider organization, for instance, when we refer a patient. So it's not just about integrating within the enterprise, but it's also looking kind of beyond that, to that continuum of care.
Awesome. That's a fantastic overview of integration, but how would you distinguish healthcare integration?
So healthcare integration is a solution that we have here in IBM. It's actually the product line that I manage, and it's one that certainly I'm the most familiar with. So this solution has been in market for about 15, 16 years, something like that. And the healthcare portion of it came online probably 4 or 5 years ago, something like that. And basically what it does is it enables you to integrate both clinical as well as enterprise applications and services and sources of data. So it has a number of different features, and I'll focus on the clinical for this particular session because that's probably what you guys are most interested in. So we have support for a number of different standards with healthcare integration. So we support HL7 version 2, version 3. We support HL7 FHIR, which is the new emerging standard from the HL7 organization. We just released support for that very recently, actually about 3-4 weeks ago. We support the integrating the healthcare enterprise profiles. So we support the patient identity cross-referencing and demographics querying. We support the exchange of health-related documents outside of an enterprise. We support the auditing profiles. So lots of standard support in there, DICOM as well for medical imaging. But really what it's designed to do is to enable an organization to connect their clinical applications together to get that value, but also to connect some of those to their enterprise applications as well. So if I have key performance indicators, for instance, that I need to kind of measure against to see how well my enterprise is performing on something, for instance, like patients being admitted to hospital, how long does it take me to then discharge those patients? Those sorts of things. So I can hook those up to some of my enterprise applications, or even other types of applications like business process management applications, like analytics solutions, things like that. So that's kind of that is exactly what our healthcare integration solution does. So it's very, very geared towards standard support, and it supports a number of different use cases for a clinical setting.
Cool. Now you mentioned standards. There's a real focus on standards. So why is that?
Well, I mean, the standards are really what really is what's going to help interoperability in the industry. We've over the last few years we've been tracking some of the most interesting healthcare standards. So I briefly mentioned FHIR there. That's something that we've been looking at for the last 1 to 2 years, something like that. And we believe that it is going to be huge in the industry. It's all the bad bits from version 2 and version 3, and they've made it better. So we wanted to show that we were really taking notice of standards, particularly standards like FHIR that are really going to have an impact on interoperability. But when you think about the way standards are used in healthcare, I mean, HL7, for instance, our HL7 support, every organization uses HL7 slightly differently. Right. So we do have a focus on standards, but we provide enough of a way to kind of make our product your own, so that you can really provide the support that your organization needs. You can connect applications in a way that makes sense to you. Okay. With clinical care summary documents like CDAs and CCDs, I mean, that's when I talk about HL7 kind of being used differently across lots of different organizations. Clinical care summary documents are like the wild, wild west of all HL7.
That's an awesome analogy.
It's of all messages that are used in healthcare. So standards are a really important thing, but it's the way those standards are implemented. So we do provide a lot of support for standards. They are what's going to help with integration within organizations, particularly in healthcare. But we also look at things like IHE profiles. So integrating the healthcare enterprise, if you're not familiar with it, it's IHE.net. They're a big standards organization, global standards organization. And basically they define ways of connecting types of systems or types of applications together. So although they don't have, they're really kind of format agnostic, like the message format agnostic, but they kind of define ways to connect, for instance, like a patient index system, for instance. So it's about how you would connect to that and how you would extract meaningful data. I mean, that's the patient demographics query profile, the PDQ profile. So we don't just focus on standards like HL7 and DICOM and so on. We also focus on standard approaches to doing things as well. And like I said, I'll keep coming back to the interoperability thought, but unless we really help the market, and the market is driving itself in that way anyway, to use standards as a way of doing things, then we're going to find ourselves going back to using documents like like similar to those that of CDA and CCD and so on, that are just, it's a free-for-all. So, and it makes it much, much more complex to actually build these integrations and so on. So yes, huge focus on standards for us, but that's not all what we do. There's other things in there as well, but it's probably our biggest focus.
Fantastic. So what benefits are clients seeing that are actually using the IBM Healthcare Integration?
Well, like I said, we've been in the industry now for 15 to 16 years. We have hundreds of customers in healthcare, across all health-related verticals like pharmaceutical, life science, and so on, using the integration product. In terms of the benefit of those customers are seeing, so I've got some examples I've just written down in front of me so I remember. So there's a big US health provider, hospital in Western USA. So they're a big hospital network. They have like 43, 44, 45 big hospitals across 3 states. And basically, because of the EHR mandates, that they were kind of being pushed down this route by Meaningful Use to implement electronic health records. And they implemented our healthcare integration solution. And just because of the sheer size of the organization, they needed something that was robust enough to cope with the number of messages, that was fast enough to kind of really make sure that they were meeting their own targets, that they didn't have a nurse waiting on lab results that had already been sent, and they were just kind of waiting for them to arrive. So really, really huge organization there. They handle probably 2.5 million messages a day over the integration product. One of the key things for them, as well as the kind of robustness of the product, was the fact that as they grew their organization, they're already like a 40-odd hospital network when we started working with them. But as they continue to grow, that it was very quick and very easy to add new hospitals to their network. Right. So they were able to integrate them very, very quickly. They were able to maintain standards integrity as they did that. Awesome. So that's something that they gained from it. That they use that for today. A couple of other examples. One of the largest children's hospitals in China. Actually, I've got another good example from China, if I can keep it in my head for now. So one of the largest children's hospitals in China, I briefly mentioned key performance indicators. So they were using an ad hoc solution to integrate. So they were using very much point-to-point. They had a partial integration engine in there as well for their clinical side. And they were finding that they had to report on like 170 key performance indicators. Right, okay. And they were making decisions based off of that. Now, because they were relatively inefficient in the way they were connecting their applications, their services, their systems together, they were finding that actually to report on those key performance indicators, it was taking them like 2 or 3 days to compile those reports. So they integrated with our healthcare integration solution. Yep. They connected clinical. They also connected some of their enterprise systems as well. They're still on that journey, which is good. They're adding new applications all the time. They're diversifying their business, which is great. But they have been able to decrease the time it takes to report on those key performance indicators to a matter of minutes, 2 to 3 minutes. They're doing it now. So much, much quicker to do that. And because of that, they're able to make business decisions faster. Right. So they found that they have a reduction in waste. They found they had a reduction in patient wait times. Just tons and tons and tons of benefits that this organization is seeing. The other hospital I was thinking of, it's one of the largest people's hospitals in China, in Beijing, and they're kind of seen as like the pinnacle of health delivery in Beijing. They do a lot with referrals, and they were finding that they were having a lot of challenges when it came to referring patients or having patients referred to them. It was taking a lot of time. But they were most impressed with the fact that we have such an open platform for integration. They were most impressed with the fact that it was very standards based. So they could build their integrations in such a way that it meant it was very, very quick to kind of recreate those with other similar applications as well. They're able to use these things called patterns that we have. I don't want to get too technical, but we have patterns, and they found that they were able to architect a pattern once and then reuse that across their enterprise. So it was very quick to build those integrations. But basically, they were able to create these longitudinal patient records once they had all of their applications and systems integrated, and create those clinical care summaries and send them over to the referring hospitals very, very quickly and very securely. So that's quite a nice, slightly different to the other ones that we talked about, but that's all about referrals. So they were able to do that much, much quicker. Final one is a big teaching university hospital in Canada. Slightly different again. They implemented healthcare integration because of the number of patients that they were starting to see, the number of increasingly complex patients that were coming in. They were finding that their care staff were finding it really difficult to cope with this. It was a gradual increase in the number of patients, but after a while, they were really starting to see, things coming up, not coming apart at the seams, but they were starting to see that strain. Yeah, sure. So they wanted to actually, it wasn't integration. Integration wasn't the reason that they implemented the solution. They actually wanted to do like a care pathway management. So they wanted to manage the flow of patients around the hospital. They wanted to manage the flow of resources like beds and physicians with specialist skills around that hospital to make it much more efficient. So they realized that actually they couldn't do that until they had that integration layer in there, because then they could see what patients were where. They were connected to all of their systems across all 3 or 4 campuses that they had. And they were able to greatly reduce the time it was taking for patients to move through the emergency department. Some patients weren't even going to the emergency department because they simply didn't need to be there. Given the conditions that they had, they were able to say, you don't need to go to the ED, you can go straight over to this ward here, and we'll make sure that we have the skills and the facilities available to treat you over there. So it was much, much more efficient, much less strain. Patients were only there in the places where they needed to be, and so on. So 4 really nice references. All of those are available on IBM.com. If you navigate into integration and just do a look through the list for case studies, client success stories, they might be called. All of those are publicly available references. That's
wonderful.
Things to read.
Fantastic. So shall we investigate Twitter and see what questions await us? Okay.
Let's do it.
Forgive me if I get the terminology incorrect. Okay, so first up, does IBM Healthcare Integration connect EHRs like Epic and Cerner?
Yes, we do. So Epic and Cerner, for those like you who aren't aware, Epic and Cerner are probably 2 of the biggest electronic health record providers. And we have done multiple installations where we've actually connected in with Epic or Cerner, or a few others. I won't mention any names, but there are a lot of electronic health record providers, and we've done we've used a number of them in projects. But yeah, Epic and Cerner, absolutely.
Fantastic. Next up. Okay, does IBM Health Integration handle CDAs?
Yes, it does. So I briefly talked about CDAs. So like I said, CDAs are clinical care summary documents, are a bit interesting to handle, just because they're complex. I said it's like the wild, wild west now, which is not too far from the truth. So as part of the product, we provide something called a clinical data analysis profile. And basically this is a way to model, what you want to see from a clinical care summary document. So some of these big XML documents, I mean, we support more than just CDAs for these care summary document, for the clinical data analysis profiles. But specifically for CDAs, what you can do is you can build a model that extracts only the meaningful information that you want to get out of those. So it's a way to very quickly pull out information on a patient that is actually going to be useful to you, but also to kind of repackage that and do some transformation so that you could, for instance, put it into an electronic health record, or you can package that up and send that on to a department where you're referring the patient to, for instance. You could send it to multiple destinations. So for instance, you could just pull out some demographics information and put that into an analytics engine to say, what's the ICD code, what's the patient's like date of birth or physical location or things like that, so that you can start to build up a picture of which diseases are happening where. So, I mean, there's all sorts of things that you can do with that, but the clinical, the data analysis profiles will really help you with those very big, very complex documents like CDAs. So, yeah, absolutely, we provide support for them. We can read them in. We can do the transformations on those. We can enrich them in certain ways, and push them out to at the endpoints that are specified.
Fantastic. Okay, so we've got one more, which is, how do I connect to a HIE?
So I think in this context, an HIE is Health Information Exchange. If I'm not, can that person please tweet again? Healthcare is one of these, and we should know in IBM as well. I mean, we love our acronyms, but healthcare is a bit, there are a lot of acronyms in healthcare. So I'm going to go with Health Information Exchanges. I hope that's what you meant. So for Health Information Exchanges, I talked about some of the standard support that we have. So we have a number of gateway products that will secure the enterprise. Data power is one. I mean, whenever you're sending any kind of information outside of your enterprise that needs to be secured, then we would always recommend a gateway product for a start. Yeah. But we have support for IHE profiles, which are the Integration Healthcare Enterprise. So specifically, we have support for XDS and XCA, so cross-enterprise document sharing and cross-community access. Like I said, healthcare loves its acronym. So yeah, XDS and XCA we support, and those combined with the types of data that you're going to be moving around. That's how you would use the integration bus in healthcare to actually connect to that HIE. It's a really big, really complex topic. It depends if you wanted some kind of way to visualize the data there, in which case, we would look at, some of the repository type software. There's a lot of ways that you can connect to an HIE. It depends on your particular business model, what you wanted to do, what kinds of, if you just wanted to push data to an HIE, or whether you wanted to do kind of two-way communication. So, if you're really interested in that, get in touch. I think there are some contact details and everything else. So yeah, sure. More than happy to take you through it. It's a big, complex, it's a reasonably complex topic. But we absolutely can help you connect to HIEs. It just depends on the how, what makes the most sense for your organisation.
Marvellous. Well, Amy, what I will do is I'll put the links into the notes. So we'll go next. It's been an absolute joy. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. Bye-bye.